#1 network evening newscast for the season. Syracuse native David MUIR getting a lot of the credit.
Carrie Lazarus is just back from ABC News in New York, where she sat down with MUIR for a conversation.
Now, when you got the big job, you got a new office.
Yeah, I mean, it was the office Diane was in.
The first thing you notice when you walk into David MUIR's office is the flag.
Yeah, the flag, that was a gift. It flew over the Capitol on my first night anchoring the news.
There are the Emmy Awards,
the Emmys and
special photos, and evidence of a very busy guy.
This is a good day.
Did you clean up for us?
I've been doing Good Morning America and World News Tonight all this week, so it's the alarm goes off at 4 in the morning. You like this multiple?
That's what this is for.
Multiple sources of caffeine.
A light moment in the office, but it's all business when he sits down at the anchor desk to do the job that has changed since Donald Trump moved into the White House.
How much of the tweeting do you cover? These tweet storms.
How do you decide?
I think the tweets themselves sort of make the decision for you. Do you know what I mean? When it's about a key issue, when it's really content-driven and it's about an issue that's important to people at home, then the tweet's going to make the newscast.
The tweets, fake news, and how growing up in Syracuse prepared him to broadcast to a divided America. It's all coming up in the conversation.
MUIR took our Carrie Lazarus on a tour of the ABC studios, where he is reminded every day of the journalists who sat at the anchor desk before him.
And it's funny, when I got the job and became the anchor, I thought it was important that we put these up on the wall to remind everybody as we come in who came before us and sort of who we learned from.
And tonight, from the studio where he brings you the news each night at 6:30, it's The Conversation with David MUIR.
So, David, thanks for having us back. Last time we were here, you were the weekend anchor dreaming of being in that chair. And now, 3 years later, you're #1 for the season for the first time in more than 20 years at ABC. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you. It's my parents back in Syracuse getting everyone to watch.
They do. I know they do.
I know they get stopped at the grocery store and everything. They're really good sports. Just got a phone call from my dad in the newsroom actually saying, I'm watching you on GMA and World News Tonight this week doing double duty. Call us when you come up for air. So they really do watch along with everybody back home, and I'm grateful. And the fact that we're here and that we're putting together this newscast is not entirely different, really, from putting together those newscasts in Syracuse when I was 21 and faking it. And the only thing different now is that you have the whole country, obviously. It's a national conversation, but much of what goes into the newscast I learned right there in Syracuse.
But now we have a divided country. The challenge has to be, how do you make sure that you are a broadcast for everybody?
Yeah, for the whole country.
Yes.
And that is the challenge right now, because as you say, it is a divided America. I go home often, as you know, and I think the hopes and the dreams and the worries, the fears of people back in central New York are really quite common to people all over this country. So having that upbringing really keeps you grounded. This sort of no-nonsense approach that they expect from a journalist. It sort of guides me every single day, even as we put together this broadcast now for the whole country and not just for the hometown.
Well, you needed some guidance from probably up above and right here to walk into that White House and get the only interview with Donald Trump. What was that like, David?
Yeah, well, I wasn't there to make the interview comfortable for President Trump or for me, and I don't think the president would expect that either. He knew that we were going to come and ask the questions that people want answered. So we walked in there with a responsibility to respect the highest office in the land, but also with profound respect for the people at home who we answer to, and to make sure we were asking, really what they wanted us to ask.
Well, half the people at home were probably rooting for you to push as hard as you could, and then there was another half that was hoping that you would not push so hard or not cross a line. Was that in your head? Were you thinking about that?
It is, and that really is where we are as a country right now. And you have to remember that there's half of the country that feels like their voices have finally been heard. And then you have to remember there are also 66 million people who voted for Hillary Clinton, thought they were going to make history with the first woman president. And they have every expectation that we're going to continue to press and ask tough questions too.
It's a tough time to be in that chair.
It's challenging, I'll say that, but I as you know, I love a challenge, and you know, every single night we are so careful with how we put these reports together. And you know, the driving principle for us is to hold people accountable really on both sides, to ask the tough questions on both sides, to point out the hypocrisy on both sides, and really just let the people at home decide for themselves.
There's the constant background noise of fake news. It's fake news.
The danger, I think, for us as a country is that what we don't want is that for all of us to become so conditioned to hearing only what we want to hear back to ourselves. And what I would hate to happen is for people to have this reaction to tough questions. And if they don't like hearing the question or think it might be a tough moment for their particular side, that they just instantly say that's fake news. I think that's dangerous. You know, I like watching both sides. I like holding both sides accountable, and I think that that's the value of what we do as journalists. And it's the checks and balances that are in place in this country that have allowed our democracy to thrive. It's a valuable part of our democracy, and without it, you know, we'd be in real trouble.
There is a lot of talk about where the people in the media come from, you know, the elites on the coasts, in the cities.
You know, when I hear those descriptions of, you know, the East Coast and the West Coast and everything in between, or as you mentioned, the media elite, I'm not the elite. I was a kid from upstate New York who wrote some letters to the local news people. And, you know, I come from humble roots back home in Syracuse, and my family was cheering me on then when they drive me to the TV station on my school breaks, and I know they're cheering me on now.
As somebody who's known you since you started in Syracuse at 22 years old, I have to say, David, the house is bigger here, but you are the same kid.
A little different from the kid who worked at Wegmans, right?
Well,
same thing. You know, the customers were always right, they used to tell us. And if you keep the viewers in mind when you're doing this, that it's about the viewers, their concerns, their hopes.
And don't break the eggs.
And don't break the eggs at the bottom of the bag.
Thank you.
I probably did a few times, but
That's all right. We forgive you.
Very